Have you ever asked yourself this question? What if there was a strategy so powerful that if you followed it with discipline, it could actually replace your job? Imagine waking up one day and realizing that your money is working harder for you than you ever worked for it. No boss, no commute, no alarm clock, unless you want one. Just freedom created by a force that quietly multiplies your money in the background. That force is compounding. Most people hear the word compounding and think of some boring financial term hidden away in textbooks. But what if I told you that this little mathematical miracle has the ability to completely change your financial future? Not just to give you extra savings, not just to cover your bills, but potentially to give you the income stream of an entire job. The idea sounds almost too good to be true. You might think only the rich can take advantage of it, or that you need millions before compounding works. But the reality is that compounding is like a money-making machine that runs on a surprisingly small amount of fuel. The key is not to treat it as something distant and complicated, but as something you can start using right now. So stay until the end to have a step-by-step plan on how to replace your job with this strategy. Give this video a like, and let's start. To understand why compounding is so powerful, we need to start with the simplest explanation. Compounding happens when you take some money, you invest it, that investment makes a return. Instead of pulling out the return and spending it, you put it back in. Then next year, your bigger pile makes an even bigger return, and then that new return gets reinvested again. This keeps repeating. The snowball grows larger and larger with each roll. That is why compounding is often called the snowball effect of money. Think about it like planting a tree. You plant a small seed. That seed grows into a young tree. The tree starts giving fruit. If instead of eating all the fruit, you plant some of the seeds from the fruit back into the ground, you now have 2 trees, then 4, then 10. Eventually, you don't just have a tree, you have a forest. And that forest gives you more fruit every single year without you needing to plant more seeds. That is compounding. Now, here comes the twist. Most people use compounding only as a way to grow some savings for the long future. They think about retirement, something 30 or 40 years away. But what if instead we looked at compounding as a tool? Not just to retire someday, but as a tool to actually free yourself from your job sooner than you think. To make this possible, we need a strategy. And one of the simplest but most effective frameworks is something called the 843 rule. You probably have never heard of it before. It is not a Wall Street buzzword. It is not something your banker will talk about, but it is a very practical way of putting compounding to work in your life. The numbers 8, 4, and 3 might look random, but they represent 3 parts of the plan. The 8 means aiming for an 8% return on your investments. The 4 means giving those investments at least 4 years to work without touching them. And the 3 means diversifying across 3 different assets so that you are never putting all your eggs in one basket. Now, at first glance, you might think 8% doesn't sound like much. 4 years doesn't sound like forever, and 3 assets sounds too simple. But when these 3 rules combine together, they form a system that can quietly but powerfully grow your money. Think about the first part, 8%. That is not a crazy number. It is actually quite normal when you look at the long-term returns of the stock market. Many index funds average around this. Real estate investment trusts often hover near this. Even dividend-paying stocks can get you close. We are not talking about chasing risky lottery tickets or the next hot crypto. We are talking about realistic and repeatable returns. The second part is 4 years. Why 4? Because compounding is not magic dust that works instantly. It needs time to show its power. 4 years is the minimum time horizon to let the ups and downs of the market even out and to give your money the chance to grow consistently. Think of it as baking bread. You can't rush it. The dough needs time to rise. The third part is 3 assets. Diversification. If you only bet on one thing, you risk losing big if that one thing fails. But by spreading across 3, you lower your risk while still letting compounding work. Think of it as building a 3-legged stool. Even if one leg wobbles, the stool still stands strong. So, what happens when you actually apply the 843 rule? Let's play out a very simple example. Imagine someone called Alex. Alex has been saving money in the bank, but the bank barely gives him 1% a year, which means his money is actually shrinking when you factor in inflation. He realizes he needs a better plan. So, he takes $15,000 and splits it into 3 equal parts. $5,000 into an index fund, $5,000 into some strong dividend-paying stocks, and $5,000 into a real estate investment trust. Now, each of these earns around 8% a year on average. After 4 years, each $5,000 grows to about $6,800. Multiply that by 3, and Alex now has about $21,000. Not bad for simply letting money sit and compound. That's a $6,000 growth without lifting a finger. But here is where the real magic begins. What if instead of just investing once, Alex decides to also add $500 a month into each of the 3 assets? That is $1,500 a month in total. After 4 years of consistent contributions plus compounding returns, each of those 3 investments would be worth about $34,000. Put together, the total is more than $100,000. Alex turned small monthly commitments into 6 figures in just 4 years. And here is where the question comes back. Could this replace a job? For many people making $30,000 or $40,000 a year, the answer starts to look very possible because once the money reaches a certain point, the compounding itself can create enough returns every year to cover your living costs. But wait, before you get too excited, there are things we need to make crystal clear. Compounding is not a get-rich-quick trick. It is not something that will replace your income tomorrow. It is a patient game. The real question is not if compounding works. It always works. The real question is, will you give it enough time and discipline for it to replace your job? Let's break this down further with another everyday example. Imagine Veronica. She works a regular office job making about $3,000 a month after taxes. That is $36,000 a year. She wants to see if compounding can cover that. She decides to follow the 843 strategy. She manages to invest $20,000 upfront, plus $1,000 every month across 3 diversified assets. At 8% annual growth, her money snowballs quickly. In 10 years, her portfolio could easily reach around $200,000 to $250,000. At that size, an 8% return alone produces $16,000 to $20,000 per year. That is already more than half of her annual job income. If she keeps going for a few more years, the portfolio passes $400,000. Now, the compounding produces $32,000 a year without her touching the principal. That is basically her job salary replaced by her investments. Think about that for a moment. Veronica doesn't have to sell her time anymore. Her money produces her salary. That is the ultimate freedom compounding offers. Now, some of you might be wondering, but what if the market crashes? What if something goes wrong? That is exactly why the rule includes the number 3. Diversification. When one asset falls, another can rise. And over time, the long-term growth trend of markets tends to recover. Remember the forest of trees analogy. Even if one tree gets hit by lightning, the rest of the forest keeps producing fruit. Another concern people raise is, what if I start with a very small amount? Can compounding still work? The answer is yes, because compounding does not care about the size of the seed. It only cares about time and consistency. Starting with $100 invested monthly may look small at first, but in 20 years that can become tens of thousands. And if you increase your contributions as your income grows, the snowball grows even faster. The hardest part of compounding is not the math. The hardest part is human behavior. Most people quit too early. They panic during a downturn. They pull out their money when they see small gains. They treat investing like a lottery instead of a machine. The truth is compounding only shows its true power to those who stay disciplined. That's why automation helps. Setting up automatic investments removes emotion from the equation. You don't think about it. It just happens. Month after month, your portfolio grows whether you're paying attention or not. It is like watering your tree on schedule without fail. Another important point is reinvesting. If you receive dividends or interest payments, don't cash them out. Put them back in. That is what accelerates compounding. Every dollar reinvested becomes another tiny worker in your money factory. Imagine hundreds of little workers building more and more bricks into your financial house every single day. You have to always remember that the math works. The question is not if compounding can replace a job. The question is if you will let it. The question is if you will feed compounding with more money earned by YouTube, since YouTube is literally on easy mode now, and it's blowing up every small channel who does things right, as I teach you in my free Telegram community with the link below. Now I want you to imagine someone earns $40,000 a year. That's about the average salary for many people. To replace that job with compounding, we need to build a portfolio large enough that the annual returns equal that salary at an 8% return rate. This means the portfolio has to be around $500,000 because 8% of $500,000 is $40,000. Now, at first $500,000 might sound like a giant mountain. but mountains are climbed one step at a time. The mistake most people make is looking at the mountain and giving up before taking the first step. Compounding works precisely because every step adds up. If someone invests $1,000 every month across 3 diversified assets and reinvests everything, in about 20 years, that portfolio can easily reach $500,000 or more. And remember, during those years, you are not just saving, you are living your life, you are working your job. But in the background, your money is building a second income stream. One day, you wake up and realize that second stream equals your job. That's when freedom begins. But what if someone earns less? Let's say $25,000 a year. Then they don't need $500,000. They need just over $300,000 invested. At 8%, that produces $24,000 a year. Much closer. With steady contributions of $500 to $700 a month, this is achievable in less than 20 years. Some can even reach it in 15 years, depending on how aggressively they save. Now, what if someone earns more, maybe $70,000 a year? Then the goal portfolio is around $875,000. Bigger, yes, but also realistic over a longer time frame with disciplined investing that can be reached in 25 years or less. And here is the key insight. Once compounding passes a certain size, the growth starts accelerating on its own. It begins to take on a life of its own. Think of it like a rocket. In the beginning, you are burning a lot of fuel to lift off. Your monthly contributions feel heavy. You see small results. But once you break through gravity, the rocket starts flying on its own. That's the portfolio. After 10 to 15 years of consistent compounding, suddenly it is growing faster every year without you adding much more fuel. This is why many people underestimate compounding. They only look at the first few years when the growth is small. They say it is not working, but the real explosion comes later, like popcorn in a pan. For a while, nothing happens. Then suddenly, all the kernels start popping at once. So, let's imagine 2 different people, Tom and Lisa. Tom saves money occasionally. He invests when he feels like it. Some months he adds a little, some months nothing. He also spends his dividends instead of reinvesting them. After 10 years, he has maybe $50,000 saved. Not bad, but nowhere near replacing his job. Lisa, on the other hand, automates everything. $800 goes into her 3 investments every month, no matter what. She reinvests every dividend and every gain. She never skips. After 10 years, her portfolio is already near $150,000. After 20 years, it crosses $500,000. At that point, the annual compounding itself equals her job income. She doesn't need to work anymore if she doesn't want to. The difference between Tom and Lisa is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is consistency. The person who sticks to the 843 strategy with discipline wins always. But let's go further. Can compounding actually replace jobs faster than 20 years? Is there a way to accelerate? The answer is yes. And the secret is increasing contributions as your income grows. For example, imagine Jake starts by investing $500 a month. Every time he gets a raise at work, he increases his monthly investment by $100. Within a few years, he is contributing $1,000 a month, then $1,500. Over 10 to 15 years, this dramatically speeds up the compounding snowball. By the time Jake has a $500,000 portfolio, his job is no longer necessary. The portfolio is producing a salary for him. This is what wealthy people do differently. They feed their snowball more fuel as their income grows, instead of inflating their lifestyle too quickly. Most people get a raise and immediately buy a new car or upgrade their house. The wealthy get a raise and increase their investments. That's why their money starts working harder for them. Now, some of you might be wondering, what about inflation? What about taxes? Will those eat away the returns? The truth is, yes, they matter. But the beauty of aiming for an 8% average return is that it already accounts for these realities. Historically, markets have delivered even higher returns. So by aiming for 8% and being consistent, you can still stay ahead. The most dangerous enemy of compounding is not inflation or taxes. It is impatience. The moment you pull out money too early, you break the snowball effect. Think about trying to bake a cake and taking it out of the oven halfway through. It is ruined. Compounding needs to be left alone to finish cooking. But here comes a fascinating psychological twist. When people first hear that compounding might take 15 or 20 years to replace their job, they feel discouraged. They say that is too long. But think about it. Most people work their jobs for 40 years. If compounding can potentially give you freedom in half that time, is that not worth it? Imagine gaining 20 years of your life back. Even more powerful is this. Compounding doesn't require you to quit your job suddenly. As your portfolio grows, you can reduce work hours. You can take lower stress jobs. You can move to part-time. The money from compounding acts like a safety net under your feet. You no longer walk the tightrope of depending entirely on one paycheck. Let's take an example of Emma. She invests consistently for 12 years. Her portfolio reaches $300,000. That gives her about $24,000 a year in compounding income. She doesn't quit her job, but she reduces her work to part-time. Now she only works 20 hours a week and covers the rest of her income with her portfolio. Her life balance improves dramatically. That is freedom too. So replacing your job with compounding is not always about never working again. It can also mean choosing work on your own terms, working less, doing only projects you enjoy, or even using compounding as a safety cushion to start your own business. The truth is, once you understand how to make money grow on its own, you are no longer trapped. You realize that your job is not the only way to earn a living. That realization alone changes everything. Now let's return for a moment to the strategy itself, the 843 rule. Why is it so effective? Because it is simple. Aim for 8%. Commit for at least 4 years. Diversify across 3 assets. If you keep doing that month after month, year after year, the outcome is almost inevitable. But here is where most people fail. They want something more exciting. They want the thrill of chasing quick wins. They get distracted by headlines. They panic when markets dip. They look for shortcuts. But shortcuts in investing usually lead to dead ends. Compounding is like planting bamboo. For years, you see nothing. Then one day, it shoots up several feet almost overnight. But if you quit watering it before that moment, you never see the miracle. And that's why the real question is not whether compounding can replace your job. The math says it can. The only question is, will you trust the process long enough? Will you treat it like a business that runs quietly in the background while you go about your life? So, let's bring everything together. If you earn an average salary today and you start applying the 843 rule with discipline, you can expect your portfolio to eventually reach the size where it produces income equal to your job. The exact timeline depends on how much you contribute and how consistent you are. For some, it might take 15 years. For others, 20. For those who contribute more aggressively, it might even be less than 10. But here is the mysterious beauty. Once the compounding machine starts working at full speed, it doesn't just replace your job. It can actually produce more income than your job ever did. Imagine a portfolio of $1 million. At 8%, it gives you $80,000 a year without touching the principal. That is more than many jobs. And the portfolio keeps growing. That is when you realize you don't just have financial freedom, you have financial power. So, can this compounding strategy replace your job? The answer is yes, but it requires you to make a choice today. A choice to plant the seed, to water it consistently, to let time and discipline do their work. If you can do that, then one day you will wake up and realize you don't need your job anymore because your money is working harder than you ever could. And that moment is worth every bit of patience. Compounding is not a trick. It is a law of nature in finance. The only question is whether you will harness it. If you use the 843 strategy with discipline, you can build a second income stream that grows year after year until it equals or surpasses your job. The choice is yours. Keep trading time for money forever, or let money itself become your worker. Because yes, compounding can replace your job. The real question is, will you let it? And the bigger question is, will you seize the opportunity you have now with YouTube? Think about it. If you've made it this far in the video, it means what I'm explaining to you in my free Telegram community works, right? So join with the link below so you will have more money to invest in compounding. And let me know if you already knew this strategy. Subscribe to this channel, Money Mindset, and see you soon. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only, and any results depend on your own decisions and actions.